AITA for kicking a mom and her new husband, and his 3 kids. Out of my apartment after they decided to live here for a few weeks, without permission. They used a spare key while I was at work, and had already unpacked their things. I couldn't sleep the night it happened. My name's Emily. I'm 27 years old, female, and I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment that I've worked my ass off to afford. It's my sanctuary. Every corner, every framed photo, every thrifted mug in the kitchen feels like proof that I finally built something of my own. That's why when I unlocked the door that evening and stepped inside, something felt off. The air was warm, heavy. I could smell spaghetti sauce simmering, hear voices in the living room. My stomach dropped before I even rounded the corner. There they were. My mom, her husband Rick, and his 3 kids, just living in my apartment like it was theirs. Boxes were open on the floor. The youngest had a toy train running across my coffee table. The fridge was stuffed full of food I didn't buy. My mom waved at me from the couch like I just walked into their home. I froze. My first thought was that I must have walked into the wrong apartment. But no. The worn rug by the door, my cat's toy mouse on the floor, it was mine. My place. My safe place. I gave my mom that brittle smile people give when they're trying not to scream. What the hell is going on? Rick barely looked up, muttering something about finally having space and the kids needing stability. My mom chirped in, saying they'd decided it was time to blend the families. They'd used the spare key I'd given her for emergencies. I could feel my chest tightening, this pressure that made it hard to breathe. I said slow and clear, "You all need to leave right now." They didn't. For an hour it was this circus of gaslighting and guilt tripping. My mom crying, Rick raising his voice, the kids watching with wide eyes. My mom kept saying, "Don't be selfish, Emily. Family sticks together." And Rick, God, Rick had the audacity to slam his fist on my counter and say, "We're not going anywhere." But I stood my ground. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely point to the door, but he didn't move. I just kept repeating it. Get out. Get out. Get out. Eventually they left. Slammed the door so hard the frame rattled, but they left. That night I sat in the middle of my living room floor, staring at the boxes they dragged in, at the scuffed marks their shoes had left on my hardwood. My sanctuary felt violated, my safe space invaded. And even though I kicked them out, some part of me knew this wasn't over. Hey guys, real quick before we keep going, don't forget to sub and drop a like if you're enjoying the story. And tell me what you think in the comments. I'll feature the best one in the next video. After that night, I went no contact for a few days. I needed to breathe. I needed to scrub the walls, wash every blanket, light candles just to chase away the smell of their cooking. It sounds dramatic, but the space felt tainted, like they'd trampled over everything I'd built. I should explain the players here because this isn't just about my mom. My mom, Linda, remarried Rick about 2 years ago. Rick is the type of guy who thinks raising his voice is the same thing as making a point. He's got 3 kids from a previous marriage. Megan, 16, a sullen teenager who smirks when adults fight. Jason, 13, a loudmouth who copies Rick's temper. And little Lily, 8, who mostly stares at everyone with wide, confused eyes. I never lived with them, never blended. Because I didn't want to. I carved out my own life separate. And then there's me. I gave my mom a spare key for emergencies only, like if I lock myself out or if something catastrophic happened, not for whatever that was. So a week after kicking them out, my mom calls. Her voice is sugary, like she's trying to pretend nothing happened. She invites me to a family dinner, saying it would be a good time to talk things through. I almost said no, but some small part of me thought maybe she realized she crossed a line. Maybe she wanted to apologize. I drove over, stomach twisted in knots, rehearsing in my head how I'd accept an apology but re-establish boundaries. When I walked in, Rick was grinning like a cat with a canary. My mom actually stood up and clapped her hands together like this was a celebration. Megan rolled her eyes at me, Jason was bouncing his leg, and Lily was coloring at the table. I sat down. My mom leaned forward, patted my hand, and said, "Emily, honey, we want to move in tomorrow." I thought I misheard her, but no, she meant it. They had already packed, already planned. Rick smirked, saying, "This place has plenty of space. It just makes sense." Something inside me snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood up slowly and said, "If you show up tomorrow, you're going to regret it." And I walked out. That night I called a locksmith, watched him change the locks while my hands trembled, adrenaline rushing. The old brass key, my mom's key, felt like poison in my palm as I tossed it into the trash. And sure enough, the very next morning Rick and the kids showed up with boxes. I heard them before I saw them. Rick barking orders, Jason laughing, Megan sighing dramatically. Then came the sound of keys jingling against my brand new lock. The confusion, the rattling, Rick cursing. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. My cat darted behind me, tail puffed up like a bottle brush. Rick's face turned red when he realized they couldn't get in. He started shouting, "You can't do this. This is our home too." I stood my ground barefoot in the hallway, my heart hammering, but my voice steady. "No, it isn't. This is my apartment, and you're not welcome here." Megan smirked at me. Jason yelled something about me being a selfish brat. And Lily started crying. My mom wrung her hands, whispering my name like I was the unreasonable one. Rick tried to shove past me, but I didn't budge. We stood there like that for 10 full minutes. Me, a wall they couldn't break through. Eventually they gave up, picked up their boxes muttering, Rick throwing me a look like he wanted to burn the building down. I shut the door, locked it, and for the first time in weeks I felt like I could breathe again. But deep down, I knew they weren't done. People like Rick never walk away quietly. After the hallway standoff, I thought maybe, that would be the end of it. That facing me, seeing that I wasn't going to back down, would finally make them understand this wasn't happening. But I underestimated just how far my mom and Rick were willing to push. A couple weeks later, my mom texted me out of the blue, "Dinner, neutral ground, just us, please." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Some stupid part of me still hoped for an apology, or at least a conversation that didn't end with someone screaming. We met at her favorite Italian place. She looked nervous but oddly expectant. When Rick walked in 5 minutes later, my stomach dropped. Then came Megan and Jason, trailing behind him, giggling like they were in on some inside joke. Even Lily was there, clutching a stuffed bunny. I should have walked out right then. But I didn't. I sat down, staring at my water glass, waiting for the inevitable. Rick slid a spiral-bound notebook across the table toward me. The cover had doodles from Lily, smiley faces and hearts. But when I opened it, my blood ran cold. It wasn't a notebook. It was a blueprint. Pages and pages of plans for how they'd move into my apartment. There were chore rotations written out. Jason vacuuming, Megan doing dishes, Lily's job being to water my plants. Notes in the margins about rearranging furniture to make room for bunk beds. One page had my name at the top with a bullet list: groceries, utilities, rent. I remember laughing. Not the funny kind. More like the unhinged, disbelieving laugh you can't stop when your brain short circuits. I asked them if this was some kind of prank. Rick leaned back in his chair, smug, and said, "This is how we'll make it work. It's only fair. You don't even use the second bedroom." My mom added, "Sweetheart, think of it as helping family. You'd barely notice the difference." I snapped the notebook shut and pushed it back across the table. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. "You are all insane." Then I grabbed my bag, stood up, and walked out. I could hear my mom calling after me, Rick cursing, Jason laughing again like it was a show, but I didn't turn around. That night, sitting in my apartment with the new locks, I realized something that chilled me. This wasn't about family. This wasn't about love. This was about control. Rick saw me as a resource, not a person. And my mom, she was willing to sacrifice me on the altar of her marriage to keep him happy. And I knew in my gut they weren't going to stop at a notebook. It didn't even take a full week before the next move. My mom called again, this time with a tone so calm it felt rehearsed. She said, "Let's meet at a diner, just you, me, and Rick. No kids. We just want to talk like adults." Something in her voice made my skin crawl, but I agreed. Curiosity, stubbornness, maybe some desperate part of me still wanted to believe she'd wake up and see how insane this had all become. The diner was nearly empty when I walked in. Rick was already there, hunched in the booth like he owned the place. My mom smiled too brightly, patted the seat across from them. No menus, no small talk. She slid a manila folder across the table. I opened it, and my jaw literally dropped. Inside was a stack of rental listings. Apartments, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, even a townhouse. Each one circled in red pen. On the front page was a note in my mom's handwriting. "Emily co-signer." Rick leaned forward, folding his hands like some wannabe businessman. "Your credit's good. Ours isn't. You co-sign, we move in, everybody wins." I actually laughed. Right there in the booth, I laughed so hard I had tears in my eyes. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice shaking. "You tried to move into my apartment, you wrote chore charts for my life, and now you want me to put my name on your lease? So I get stuck paying when you inevitably screw it up?" Rick's face twisted. "You're being selfish." My mom whispered, "Sweetheart, we just need a leg up. You can afford it." That was the moment something inside me snapped completely. I slid the folder back across the table, dropped a $5 bill on the counter for my coffee, and stood up. "Find another sucker," I said, "because I'm done." I didn't even look back when my mom started crying, calling my name. I just walked out into the night air, shaking with adrenaline and disgust. And that was it. That was the last straw. No more second chances, no more family dinners, no more pretending this was about helping. From that moment, I cut them off completely. Changed my number, blocked their emails. Silence. But here's the twist. Silence isn't really silence. It's a waiting game. And while I finally felt a sense of peace, deep down I knew people like Rick don't fade quietly. They fester. They plot. And that's where the story takes a turn. Update. Wow, I did not expect the reaction my last post got. I've spent the past 2 days glued to my phone, reading comments, DMs, even a few emails people somehow dug up. Half of you were telling me to set the place on fire. Tempting, not gonna lie. Others shared stories about boundary-stomping family members that made my skin crawl. And then there were the handful of messages calling me heartless for not helping my mom's new family. Yeah, no. One comment that stuck with me said, "They're not moving in with you because they love you. They're moving in with you because they see you as free housing with better credit." That line hit me like a brick because it put into words exactly what my gut already knew. So here's what happened after the diner showdown. Silence. At first, anyway. For about a week it was bliss. No calls, no texts, no surprise knocks on the door. I actually let myself believe it was over. That maybe they'd finally realized I wasn't budging. Then came the scratching. The first night, around 11 p.m., I heard it at my door. Tiny scraping noises, like someone trying to mess with the lock. My cat bolted under the couch, tail puffed like a bottle brush. I tiptoed to the peephole and saw Megan and Jason, the teenagers, whispering, giggling, fumbling with something metal. My blood went cold. I yanked the door open so fast they jumped back like guilty raccoons. Megan tried to cover it with her signature smirk. Jason stammered something about just stopping by. I saw it in his hand. An old key. My key. The one I tossed in the trash weeks earlier. They must have fished it out. I lost it. My voice came out shaking but sharp enough to slice. "If you ever try that again, I'm calling the cops." Megan laughed. "Call me psycho." Jason muttered something about Rick being right about me, and they bolted down the hall. My heart was hammering so hard I thought I'd faint. I sat awake all night with every light on, clutching a kitchen knife like I was in some B-grade horror movie. The next day, I marched into the leasing office, explained everything, every invasion, every attempted move-in, the kids trying to break in. The manager's face went pale. She promised to flag my unit, note everything on record, and even hinted that if they showed up again, it could count as trespassing. That gave me an idea. If Rick wanted to play dirty, fine. I'd play smarter. Because the only thing more humiliating than me rejecting them would be them getting shut down officially, by people who didn't see me as the selfish daughter, but as the rightful tenant standing her ground. And oh, I was ready to make that happen. They thought silence meant surrender. They were wrong. After I filed the trespassing report, and the leasing office promised to flag my unit, I did the boring, humiliating adult stuff nobody wants to do. I printed timelines, saved every text, screen grabbed every "we're family" message where Linda had tried to guilt me into co-signing, and I labeled each photo of boxes and footprints with dates. I brought it all to the leasing office and to the non-emergency police line. The officer I spoke to, Officer Morales, was quiet and efficient in that way that makes you feel less crazy. She said the next time they showed up with the intent to occupy, she'd come down and serve them a formal trespass warning. She even suggested getting a written statement ready so it would be official. I wrote it like a prayer. Then I did the fun part. I hired a wired security camera for the hallway, the kind with the blinding red LED that says, "We see you." I paid for it myself because if they were going to treat my home like a free hotel, they could at least be filmed when they tried. I texted 3 neighbors, Marta from 4B, an elementary school teacher who hates entitled people, Sam from 6C, a quiet guy who'd been a rock when I needed a plumber to fix my sink at 2 a.m., and my friend Jenna, and told them to be home the morning they were likely to try something. I didn't tell them why. I just said, "Promise me you'll be home Saturday at 9 a.m. I also photocopied the spiral notebook, every chore chart, every margin note that said I'd cover groceries, and slid a copy under the leasing office door with a sticky note, "For the manager. This is the plan they tried to sneak into my life with." The leasing manager called back within an hour. voice sharp with disbelief. She promised the office would not only refuse any move-in, but would press charges for trespass if they returned. Saturday morning they came like they were staging a coup. My phone buzzed. A single line from Linda. We're coming over to talk. Her punctuation was smug. Rick's exclamation emojis were vintage entitlement. At 8:52 a.m., I was at my door in sweats, coffee in hand, camera pointed at the hallway. I could hear them before I saw them. Rick barking orders, boxes collapsing, Megan hissing at Jason to stop messing with Lily's hair. I opened the door, leaned against the frame, and turned the camera toward them like a referee stepping between two fighters. They tried bargaining first. We just need a night, Rick insisted, eyes wild. You'll hate it for a week, then you'll be fine. He reached for a box, too close. I didn't flinch. I held up my phone. Officer Morales is on her way. The leasing office served you a written trespass notice on Friday. Drop the boxes. That's what made him crack. The shouting started. Rick, face boiling, shoved a walker, his own hand truck, into the doorframe. Marta and Sam appeared at their doors, peeking out. Jenna stood in the stairwell with two other neighbors, arms crossed. People who knew you are stronger than loners. The look on Rick's face when he realized the building wasn't on his side, I'll never forget it. Megan tried to use Lily as a human shield, dragging the little girl forward with theatrical sobbing. My heart clenched. I said, calm, cold, get her away from me. This is harassment. Then the physical drama. Rick lunged for the lobby door in a last attempt to force his way in. Two building security guards stepped out from the office like the cavalry. Rick shoved one. The guard stumbled and yelled. I could hear the sirens before I saw the blue lights. Officer Morales arrived inside of 5 minutes, brisk, polite, and armed with a clipboard and patience. She read them the notice, asked if they wanted to contest it in court. They didn't, and told them firmly they were not permitted on the property. Rick raged. He yelled about family. He called me every name in the dictionary of entitled men. He left a handprint on the painted walls he shoved past the security guard. Ugly, theatrical, an attempt at intimidation that would later be photographed and logged. When the police left, it was quiet in a way that felt like clearing snow after a storm. The notebook was photographed. The camera footage was saved and handed to the leasing office and Officer Morales. The building manager posted a memo in the lobby. Reminder, no unauthorized move-ins. Trespass will be prosecuted. I uploaded the camera footage to a private cloud and sent the link to 3 people. The leasing manager, Officer Morales, and Rick's listed employer, courteous, factual. This individual attempted to trespass at X address on Y date, video attached. I didn't threaten. I just gave facts. They tried power, moving boxes, using pity, weaponizing kids. I responded with paperwork, witnesses, cameras, and a wall that would not budge. The sweetest part? The small party that followed 3 days later. Not a revenge that burned people, but one that reclaimed space. I invited Marta, Sam, Jenna, and a handful of friends. We brought cheap wine and cheap pizza. We laughed at the hallway scuff marks together. I set the spiral notebook in the center of the coffee table like a trophy they couldn't take back. We toasted to boundaries. My phone filled with messages from neighbors I had never met before thanking me for doing what they were too polite to do themselves. Linda texted that night. We need to talk. Please. I read it, then blocked her number. You want escalation? I gave them the humiliation of being stopped by systems they thought they could buy their way past. They had raged. They had tried to force it, and they had lost. But the war wasn't over. Rick's temper had been publicly recorded. Linda now knew there were consequences. And I knew something else. Something small and fierce. Peace tastes better cold, but it's sweeter when you make sure no one forgets who's standing in the doorway. They didn't go quietly. They got louder. 3 days after I blocked Linda and watched Officer Morales drive away, my morning started like any other. Cold coffee, the glow of my phone, my cat on the windowsill. I grabbed my keys and felt the hollow in my stomach before I saw the car. 2 tires shredded. Long, ugly gouges along the driver's side door like someone had taken a box cutter and gone to town. My thrifted mug. Home is where the Wi-Fi connects automatically. Was smashed into 100 glittery pieces across my porch. Someone had written with a black marker on my entryway mat, "Made room for you. Now you're mean." The handwriting was jagged. Rick's handwriting, or someone trying to be him. Everything went hot and bright in my chest. Rage, fear, the bitter fizz of vindication. This was retaliation. Not subtle, not accidental, physical, personal. I called the police. Officer Morales' voice was a steady anchor until she arrived and the reality of it hit. The cost of calling the cops on your own family. A formal report, insurance numbers, photos. The leasing office insisted on reviewing the building's security footage again. A neighbor, Marta, handed me a picture she'd taken of a dark sedan idling down the block the night before. I held all of it like proof that my life was being vandalized by people who used to say, "We're family." But they didn't stop at my car. 2 days later, I got an email from work. HR wanted to meet immediately. My pulse dropped through the floor. At the meeting, a calm HR rep slid a printout across the table. An angry, anonymous complaint alleging I'd yelled obscenities at a local contractor, Rick, and threatened his family. The complaint was a collage, screenshots of the neighborhood memo I'd posted, the leasing office's warning, and a doctored photo. Me, mid-argument in the hallway, frozen and cropped to look like I'd been lunging. Rick had apparently called my office and left a voicemail accusing me of harassment. His voice on the recording was loud with faux restraint. "She's unstable," he said. "You should know who you keep." My manager squeezed my shoulder, sympathy frayed with worry. I explained everything, the trespass, the notebook, the camera footage, the police report. I offered evidence. HR said they'd investigate, thanked me for being proactive. But the damage was the way everyone in the room suddenly glanced at me like I might snap. Gaslighting works in slow, poisonous loops. First they push, then they claim victimhood. Then outsiders start to doubt the person standing on the facts. I could feel that doubt like cold fingers at my spine. That night, there was a voicemail from Linda. Her voice was thin and small. "Emily, we're so hurt. How could you do this to us? You used your keys, your family. How could you be so cruel?" She hung up before I could answer. 2 days after that, my mailbox was torn off the post. My neighbors texted frantic pictures, stamped envelopes ripped open, a child's crayon drawing shoved into my door frame with the words "mean" scribbled on it. Lily had drawn a heart. Someone had scrawled through it. I kept replaying Lily's face, small, confused, whenever they used her. They'd weaponized the kid the way my mom always had a weaponized guilt. Helplessness as leverage. I thought about ripping Rick's employer email back at him, about sending the footage to every realtor in town so his reputation would leak like bad plumbing. But revenge tastes best when it's chosen, not reflexive. I'd learned a rule over those weeks. Escalation matched escalation. They wanted public chaos and whispers. I keep my fact public, my anchors legal, my friends loud. So I made a list, property claims, additional police reports, the HR packet printed, the neighbor photos cataloged, the timeline updated. I filed the additional vandalism report, gave Officer Morales the car damage photos, and sat down with a lawyer the leasing office recommended, just to get the language right, to have someone who knew how to make escalation bite back legally. Then I did something small and feral. I went to my kitchen and dug out the spiral notebook. Their chore charts, now filed and copied into 3 places. I taped a clean copy inside my front hall in a protective sleeve, a quiet billboard reading, "This happened. This is why." It made me feel less alone, like evidence and truth could anchor a life that had been tumbled. They'd tried vandalism, rumor, HR, and weaponized children. They were desperate, irrational, and loud. But every loud thing they did only made me more deliberate. I slept with my phone charged and my camera rolling. I kept my neighbor list current. I didn't reply to pleas. I didn't call. I didn't let panic drive me. Something else tightened inside me, small and fierce. I was no longer only protecting an apartment. I was protecting the version of myself who had built it. And now that they'd rattled that door, they'd finally seen how hard I could hold it shut. I promised myself that if they pushed one more time, I wouldn't just defend myself. I'd end it. The morning it happened was gray and rainy. I was pouring coffee when my phone buzzed with a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. Later, listening back, I recognized Rick's voice, calm in a way that was worse than shouting. "We're coming one last time. We're taking what's ours." That same day, Officer Morales called me first, as if she could feel it coming. "We got your latest report. If they show up again, call 911 immediately. We'll treat it as a violation of the trespass order." They came at dusk. Rick's truck pulled up with the tailgate down. My mom, Linda, stepped out in a raincoat, clutching a small bag. Megan and Jason jumped out, phones already up like they were about to record their own reality show. Little Lily was nowhere in sight this time, thank God. I didn't open the door. I stood inside, camera streaming, and dialed 911 before they even knocked. Through the peephole, I saw Rick jamming something into the lock, maybe a screwdriver, maybe just trying to look threatening. Linda was shouting my name, voice breaking. "We just need a place, sweetheart. Don't do this to us." Sirens cut through the rain before they even managed to knock. 2 patrol cars slid to a stop by the curb, blue lights flashing across the hallway. Officer Morales herself stepped out, hair plastered to her face, voice clipped and firm. She read the trespass order aloud. Rick tried to argue. Megan caught the whole thing on her phone. Morales warned him once. When he refused to back up, she cuffed him for violating the order and attempting to force entry. His roar echoed off the concrete like a wounded animal. Linda collapsed onto the stairs, sobbing. She didn't try to help Rick. She just stared at me through the peephole, mascara running like I was the monster. They took Rick away in the patrol car. Morales handed Linda a copy of the violation paperwork and told her plainly any further harassment from her or the kids would be treated as criminal. She left without looking back. That was the last time they came to my building. I spent the next week cleaning, replacing the shredded doormat, repainting the gouges Rick left on the doorframe. My lawyer filed a restraining order, attaching every police report, photo, and video. It was granted. The leasing office renewed my lease early, waived my next month's parking fee, and changed the building's key system to digital fobs. No more spare keys floating around. HR at my job closed the anonymous complaint after seeing the evidence. They apologized for the stress. And then silence. Not the tense kind. Actual clean silence. I bought myself a small house plant and set it in the corner of the second bedroom, the one they tried to claim. A living symbol that the space was still mine. When friends came over, I showed them the spiral notebook, now sealed in a plastic sleeve and tucked into a file with the court documents. Proof. Memory. A reminder. I still get the occasional anonymous email. Just a single line. Family sticks together. But I don't respond. I don't even read them all the way through. My lawyer has them archived. My door stays locked. My cameras stay on. And for the first time since this all began, I sleep without my phone in my hand. Here's the part people don't expect. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not even sad. I'm relieved. I didn't just keep them out of my apartment. I kept them out of the life I built. I drew a line, enforced it, and watched the system hold. The last time I saw Linda was in court, and standing next to a public defender while Rick signed the agreement to stay away from my address. She wouldn't meet my eyes. For a second, I thought she might mouth sorry. She didn't. When the judge stamped the papers, the sound was soft but final, like a door closing, like a lock turning. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel and like it. You can also watch more shocking stories in the playlist.